Bangladesh has seen a lot of changes over the last few years. The world is also in turmoil. Ukraine war, the Middle East war have impacted the whole world. It has also impacted the UN system and other multilateral agencies. The impacts are on Bangladesh as well. We'll discuss all these issues with Stefan Liller. He is resident representative of UNDP in Bangladesh. Welcome to our show, Stefan.
Thank you so much.
So you have been in Bangladesh for 4 years. You have seen a lot. Awami League government, the July uprising, and the new government. As you leave Bangladesh in a week, what is your impression?
First of all, let me thank you also for this opportunity to come to the Daily Star to share a bit reflections on my 4 years in Bangladesh. Of course, we have also worked very closely with Daily Star over these years together with other media houses, so very pleased to be here. No, I feel very fortunate to have come at a very interesting, I've been here for a historic time in Bangladesh. To have seen 3 different administrations and also an evolution, a lot of changes in society during these different years. As you might know, or as the viewers might know, UNDP, the United Nations Development Programme, is present in 170 countries around the world. So it's the global development arm of the UN system, where we work on issues around poverty reduction, resilience building, climate change issues, and also in terms of support during crisis and conflict. The years here have been fascinating. We have worked, of course, we have been here since independence as UNDP. And over the years, the work we are doing has changed with the needs of the country and the government. So while after the post-liberation war, we might have worked a lot on reconstruction or building and setting up institutions. Over the years that have come, we have worked on other issues as climate change, adaptation, resilience, digitalization, governance issues, economic development issues. So the work has changed quite a lot, and that's what I've also seen during my 4 years here, where a lot of work, perhaps in the first 2 years, focused on our resilience and climate adaptation work. And there we have worked for 15, 20 years in many of these areas to prepare and support the country in terms of adapting to climate change, but also climate change mitigation. A lot of focus around that. I think during the first 2 years, we also had the opportunity to receive the Crown Princess of Sweden, who's a UNDP Goodwill Ambassador. She came to Bangladesh on her maiden travel or maiden visit in her Goodwill Ambassadorship. And we had the opportunity to showcase the very long and strong relationship between Bangladesh and UNDP, but also to see all the aspects of our work. So we had the opportunity to travel to climate vulnerable communities in Khulna. We went to some of the chars to see the dynamics on Hatia, for example. We visited Basan Char and the refugee camps in Cox's Bazar. We had the opportunity to engage with business leaders and companies, both of course Swedish, she's from Sweden, but from many other countries as well, with academia, and to show kind of the breadth of the work that we're doing here. So that was really, really a highlight. Of course, over the first 2 years, you could feel that there was a growing sense of tension and worries around the civic space, accountability, with some sort of culminated in July, August 2024, when the student uprising led to a regime change as well. I think a complicated and traumatizing, but also a moment of a lot of hope for Bangladesh. And that changed a lot of the focus and work we were doing as UNDP as well. A lot of the aspirations that were articulated, particularly among the young people, were also taken up by the interim government in terms of an entire new reform agenda. And the interim government also asked for UNDP support in terms of forwarding that agenda to work on issues around, elections, judicial reform, anti-corruption issues, many other things as well. So during these 2 years, we accompanied the country in terms of supporting that reform agenda, which also culminated in a large support that the United Nations had, led by UNDP, but supported by many development partners on electoral support, where we supported everything from the voter registration process, purchasing thousands of computers and eye scanners to make sure that the registration was correctly and updated. I think 5 million new voters were registered during that time, and UNDP has historically also worked in these type of issues. I think we had a really big program in 2008 when the first national ID cards that all Bangladeshis use today was actually done through a UNDP.
That was revolutionary, I would say.
Yes, and it was a UNDP government program as well, so that it kind of continued that history of work around elections, and this, of course, was no exemption. So even the ink, people have been struggling to get ink off their fingers. Even that ink, UNDP helped support for election day. So a lot of reform also with the judiciary and other parts of the National Human Rights Commission. So we've seen, quite a lot of changes, and now we have a new government, newly elected government coming in with their priorities, continuing some reforms, but also, refocusing in the direction that they want to bring the country.
Right. So you're talking about reforms, and we know that how this government has been elected. It was following an interim administration after an uprising, and the main theme of the uprising, I would say that end discrimination. So from that perspective, what's your understanding how Bangladesh is being able to end or reduce discrimination, because that also needs policy reforms. So where are we now, after I think about 2 years? So where are we now? Because you have been involved in reform process, consulting.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of progress in the last 2 years, and mainly because the agenda has focused much more on governance type of issues. So there are a number of different reforms that have been pushed. Of course, the 11 reform commissions were set up. UNDP supported some of them on the request of the government, but also to organize consultations around the country. So there has been a lot of advance. So, for example, on judicial independence and efficiency, there was a push both by the interim government, but by the judiciary itself. In terms of oversight institutions, for example, we work closely to support developing and consulting around new legislation for the National Human Rights Commission. So that's also still ongoing, but also to strengthening some of these oversight institutions. So, Anti-Corruption Commission, but also working with the Bangladesh Public Service Commission to ensure, that the new cadre of new public servants and are selected on meritocratic basis. So a large number of different reforms. So we have seen there's been a lot of interest, both from the government, but of course more than anything from the people, that many of the demands that came out in July, August, they want responses to that. And we saw that also with the Consensus Commission. All parties signed up to a lot of different things that they all agreed on, and many of them have to do with core governance reforms. There's still, of course, a lot of issues to work on in that field. Elections reform, electoral reform, continue judicial reform, police reform, public administration reform. So there's still a lot of work to do. But I think the topics are out on the table. The interim government started a process that this elected government need to carry forward. Not exactly as the interim government started, but in their own way. And we have seen that. Most of the ordinances that the interim government developed were passed. Some of them were not passed. Some of them have been changed. Some are now being under consultation again and will be reissued in terms of law. So I think the appetite and the pressure from society, and particularly the young people, to change, accountability, non-discrimination, it's there. So I think these are topics that the whole society, and changes that the whole society wants to see.
So yeah, I mean, we are talking about reforms. These are definitely in the papers first, theory first, but then those will be implemented. Now we have a different reality, which is we have seen that poverty reduction has slowed down, or there have been more people who have become poor. So that's the data that we have. And of course, the wars, Ukraine war and this Middle East war, these also are grave concerns at this moment. So the government is more like firefighting instead of going for, you know, true reforms that were required or that were demanded. So it's a huge challenge. What do you think how authorities should go about this?
I think first of all it's important to remember that Bangladesh has had a tremendous journey in terms of its development over the last 30-40 years. What many people around the world did not expect of Bangladesh, with tremendous poverty reduction, high growth rates, infrastructure reaching everyone around the country. So the development journey of Bangladesh Bangladesh is a poster child for development. After COVID, the growth has reduced. It's about 3.5% every year, and inflation has also been rising, which is very complicated, particularly for more vulnerable and poorer households and families. And together, compounded with what's happening in the world, as you mentioned, in the Middle East and elsewhere, with fuel prices going up, it has direct impact on the people of Bangladesh, and particularly on the most vulnerable families, because when the prices of fuel go up, so does the prices of fertilizer, so does the prices of food, and together with that inflation, it creates a lot of challenges for many people. So a lower growth rate, but compounded with the ripple effects that Bangladesh are suffering because of the global situation, will leave many more people vulnerable. So of course it's very challenging for the new government coming in with a solid program that they wanted to focus on, and as soon as they started, the whole context changed. So they need to focus also on some of the more immediate issues to make sure that the power generation and food and security and many other basic things. So that doesn't mean that other type of longer term reforms are not there. They're in all the programs. I mean, we saw the rollout of the farmers card and many other programs by the government which are addressing the challenges that people are facing. So it will be important to continue with the reforms, but it is a challenging moment, and not only for Bangladesh, for many countries around the world with the current geopolitical and also situation in the Middle East.
No, so Bangladesh is graduating out of LDC, though there is an application to defer the time. So this is a very critical time for Bangladesh. And we know that because of the war and other happenings around the world, the development aid is also declining. There's more sort of protectionism we can see. There's more military spending in Europe, in America, in many Asian countries. So, how can then more money can be allocated for the LDCs, for the underdeveloped countries?
So first of all, to mention on the LDC, again, Bangladesh is about to graduate because it has made a tremendous journey during the last plus 20 years.
But that's reversing now.
It's not reversing. We are at a very critical point now when, in order to sustain and further, I mean, the LDC graduation will mean that some of the tariffs, for example, for Bangladeshi products abroad will have tariffs, so it will be slightly more expensive. So the private sector in Bangladesh will need to evolve, because you cannot only compete on lower prices, but you have to compete on other issues, on productivity, on diversification of product, on innovation, many other things that will become much more important. I mean, Bangladesh also has a smooth transition strategy, so there is a plan how to deal with this that the government has developed and is following. And we have known this for a number of years, that the LDC graduation is coming closer. Either we will graduate this year or it will be in 2 or 3 years. So I think that the biggest challenge is actually not preparing well enough. I think there's a plan. Government and private sector know what it needs to do, but needs to continue working in terms of implementing that plan, implementing the reforms that will set Bangladesh up to be ready for a different type of economy. But that's also desirable because it's an economy that might be more sophisticated, more innovation, competing in a different league, if you wish. And of course, you mentioned about development cooperation. Development cooperation has gone down a lot over the last 2 years. Some big historic donors have cut. Many others are also
climate change, health,
and many different. I think there's hundreds of projects that have been cut in Bangladesh just over the last 2 years. But several donors are cutting this, and not only to Bangladesh, to many other countries,
right.
to Africa, to other places around the world. So it is a challenging situation. I mean, what will be important for Bangladesh going forward is, tax GDP ratio. I mean, Bangladesh has one of the lowest tax GDP ratios in the world, and it will be very important to collect more taxes to be able to pay for the type, health, education, investments in the people. But that will, of course, need to be coupled with private investments, also, international support. But the base will also be very important that Bangladesh develops its own stronger economy, also starts looking, whether it's in the vicinity in East Asia and Asia, to start striking trade deals with different partners, to expand the markets where they can sell their goods. But it is a little bit of a perfect storm with, the global situation and then, these aid cuts at the same time. And as you know, the UN system as a whole is also suffering some of those challenges as well.
So you talked about diversifying economy, creative economy, and so and so. You have been working with youth unemployment, skills building, and many other issues, other projects. So what could be as Bangladesh is a hugely youth country, a lot of youth unemployment is there. So what could be the most innovative ways of creating jobs for them?
I think, there's a good growth, but the most challenging issue, as you say, it's generating jobs, but not any jobs. It has to be jobs, decent jobs, well-paid jobs, that are sustainable, that needs to be created. And I think that is one of the big challenges. There's also a challenge when you meet with both with universities and students and other. I mean, I think more than 13% of young people that have graduated from university, they're unemployed.
Right.
It's a large informal sector. More than 80% of the economy is in the informal sector. So what's important is to create, dignified, good, decent job for the young people. So there's a mix. I don't have a magical
That really sounds
goal.
very nice, decent jobs you're
Yes.
talking about, but in reality, it's not there.
I mean, it is essentially the private sector that can create jobs. So I think the ecosystem around the private sector, whether that's deregulation, whether that's making it easier to do business, making it easier and more attractive for foreign investments in Bangladesh. These are the things that will help, but also the development of new industries or new products, whether that, it could be leather, light manufacturing and other things as well, that Bangladesh can compete with. But at the same time, there is a slight mismatch between what the universities and the education system produces and what the private sector is wanting. So
Okay.
to bridge that gap as well between the skills, what the companies need and what's available on the market.
Both
That's
locally
really
and
important.
internationally.
Both locally and internationally. And that's where it's important to invest in the young people and their skilling and upskilling and their competitiveness, so they can also get, because when we sometimes speak to the private sector, say, well, we can't find the talent that we need for the type of jobs that we have now or in the future.
Right.
So that match has to be, of course, as UNDP, we're also working on this issue. We have a program called Future Nation, funded by the private sector with BIDA and Ministry of Commerce, that's looking precisely at this type of thing. For youth, I think we have 200,000 young people registered to this platform where they can do a self-assessment of their skills, but then they also have a lot of courses that they can take to help build their skills. But much more of these type of initiatives are needed in order
So
to...
how UNDP or other UN organizations have been involved in more skill building and job creation?
Yeah,
Can it help? Because you said that development cooperation is going down, so it is basically the private sector that needs to come up and support this. So how can this international community help?
So we always work through government as UNDP. ILO also, International Labour Organization, works a lot on issues around skills and employment. So we do work with government and through government with these type of platform and these type of programs. It's not something that we set up separately. We set it up to integrate with the local system. So what we can do is we can bring international experience, comparative experience, technical inputs and advice, and funding. But it has to be, some of that has to be done with the government, but then of course also the private sector, because both the government and the UN or international partner cannot really generate the jobs.
Okay.
It needs to be done by the private sector, and for that you have to have an environment that's conducive for the private sector to thrive and to grow.
Right.
So these jobs are created.
It's an obvious thing that Bangladesh is at the forefront of climate change, and the funding for climate change sector is going down. Especially over the last 2-3 years. Where is it going actually? And we don't hear much about SDGs. As we heard about the MDGs, Bangladesh was a champion in MDG, but SDG, no.
Yeah, I think on the climate finance, that's a huge issue. For example, Bangladesh, I think, has less than 1% of the global emissions, but it's at the same time one of the most climate vulnerable countries in the world. I've had the opportunity also to travel extensively through Bangladesh during my 4 years here. So I've seen, the front lines of what climate change means in places like, Shatkhira and others, where you can see the vulnerability and, what the impact is on families and households. So of course, as UNDP, again, we are working in terms of, looking at climate resilient infrastructure or livelihoods, opportunities, and so on for these community. But there is a huge gap between the financing that's available and the financing that's needed. And I know Bangladesh, and I don't have all the numbers in my head, but spends billions of dollars every year on climate change adaptation. And there's a national adaptation plan, and it requests many-fold more funding to be able to just adapt to the current kind of situation. So that is very challenging. So there's no magic wand to this. It has to be a combination of international financing, green financing, blended financing from some of these vertical environmental funds, and also government financing to try and address this. Again, on the situation of the SDGs, it is still our compass, our north as the UN. One of it's like a North Star also for UNDP in terms of articulating our work around this agenda. I believe only in Bangladesh I saw some number that you need more than $80 billion a year to get to achieve the SDGs. Most of the countries in this region and in the world are lagging behind, and the situations we spoke about earlier with situation in Middle East, inflation, higher energy prices will make it even more challenging. But I think it's important. The difference also between the MDGs and the SDG agenda is that they're quite different. The MDGs was like easier goals, like poverty reduction, or it was more quantifiable, whereas the SDG agenda is much more complex, much more interrelated, much more qualitative. So it's much more complex. And again, we're just 4 years out, and it doesn't look like we will reach there anywhere in the world. No. So we'll see what happens towards 2030. What kind of goals, what kind of modifications is done to this. What I can say though is that during my 4 years here is that Bangladesh have had quite a sophisticated system in terms of implementing the SDG, overseeing it, interministerial coordination. So there has been historically a lot of
there's been a lot of
focus here.
disruptions as well because of the political and other changes,
Yes.
COVID, wars.
Yes. So, but there has been, Bangladesh has really taken this agenda on board, but now, I think in other places as well.
But I think this SDG is also something which is linked to the July uprising, theme, the ending discrimination.
Yeah, so
inequality.
Yes, of course, there are
governance.
Yes, some of the goal 16 on governance and strong institution. Several of the SDGs actually address many of the issues that the young people and other people articulated as their challenges, as their aspirations. So, of course, if you would fulfill the entire SDG agenda for Bangladesh or for Sweden, where I'm from, everybody will, have a much better life. And
things wouldn't have been at this stage, possibly. Who knows?
No, and that's why the world. I'm not sure, and I don't think that the world would agree on the SDGs today. When they agreed on the SDGs, it was unanimous among all the countries. I think if somebody would table that same agenda, there's no way that this would pass today. So it is the world's agenda. It's not the UN's agenda. It's the country. It's a member states' agenda.
Right.
So it's our common development agenda.
You know that Rohingya crisis has been there for quite long, and it's quite a burden for Bangladesh. And given the current realities in Myanmar, do you think that repatriation is possible anytime soon?
So just first to say that Bangladesh people have been extremely gracious and generous in terms of receiving all the refugees, not only the ones that came in 2017, but also that have come previously. It is a challenge, and it is also a burden on the Cox's Bazar district as a whole, compounded also with the cuts in funding, international funding, has made the situation even more challenging. But also the situation in Myanmar is more challenging right now than even it might have been a couple of years ago. So the only long-term real solution is to find a political solution in Myanmar, so these people will have the opportunity to go back, under safe, dignified, voluntary repatriation. But until that happens, and until there's a political solution, and there I think all countries, and Bangladesh, all the countries have a responsibility to contribute to solving that political issue. But in the meantime, while these people are here, I think it's important to see how this burden can be shared between the international community, but also Bangladesh. And at least from the UNDP point of view, we are a development organization. We're not a humanitarian organization. We work in between humanitarian and development in this kind of nexus space. For us, it's also important to look at the whole, not only the Rohingya refugees, but like the whole Cox's Bazar, which is also the district, which is a district that has been lagging behind.
A lot of people have been affected.
Yes, but even before on the SDGs, they were one of the districts lagging behind. So
right.
We supported the government in terms of developing a district development plan a number of years ago. So our philosophy is also that it will be important. It's not just to invest in the Rohingya response of the host community. The entire district needs a lot of investment, and whether in institution and climate change adaptation, but in skills development, how we can connect job creation to some of the big infrastructure projects that are there, so that the entire district can be lifted. Because as it is now, there has been both environmental, social, other type of implications that are very challenging for the whole district. So I think we cannot look at the Rohingya and the host community. We have to look at the entire district and how we work with the development of that district, so all the people living there.
So you said that funding is going down, and what would be your call to the international community from this perspective? Because there's a lot of young people there, and there are often sea journeys, Rohingyas, as well as some Bangladeshis are taking sea routes. Those are very risky, affairs.
No, it's very tragic, and I think we all learn from the news. People take these risky sea travel. Many people die, or it's very challenging. It's very sad. my call and my plea to the international community is to continue to stand with Bangladesh. This is not Bangladesh problem alone. This is it's a problem that we have to face together. It's an issue that needs a lot of solidarity and support from other partners as well. But not only Europe or somewhere. It's also responsibility of the countries in this region. So I think that it will be important to continue with the diplomatic efforts, the outreach efforts, the information to keep this issue on the agenda, because it's one of the most protracted and largest refugee crises in the world. But at the same time, you have Ukraine, you have Sudan, there's so many other places where the world's attention turned to, and working in the media, there's something new comes up and everybody turns there. The focus goes away, but the situation here hasn't changed. So that's also important to keep, and I think both I think the governments here have tried to keep that on the agenda and push, but also when the funding is being cut globally, it is very challenging. But again,
Stefan, you said just now that wars in different parts of the world, and also the protectionism, more spending in militarization. So these are all affecting the UN system as well. So do you think that the UN is also not being able to play its due role because of these new phenomena that's growing?
I mean, the UN is very much a reflection of its member states. So UN is not like a separate thing. I mean, the UN is all the member states. And if the UN is to work in the most ideal and appropriate way, it will be if all the member states collaborate and work together in that sense. But the divisions that you see between member states, you also see them playing out in the UN. So sometimes these, the relevance of the UN can go up and down, depending also how much faith countries put through the UN. So right now, I think there's a bit of a crisis. Several big important countries are, not contributing or paying the assessed contributions or supporting the UN in other ways, which make it even more challenging. Less money, less opportunities to support, and perhaps driving the UN a little bit into a corner, when also a lot of the deals, global deals, are struck outside the UN kind of framework. Different countries are pushing their way and moving their agendas in different ways. So it is a challenging, and I mean, we've seen a lot of changes in New York. There's this UN 80 agenda. There is a reform agenda. We still need, I mean, it's an 80-year-old institution, and having worked for the UN for the last 25 years, I mean, it's an organization that I love, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't constantly need to be worked on. We don't have a perfect, I think, it's the only type of organization of its kind. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. We still need to continue working on it collectively to make it better, to make it more relevant, and also do the reforms to the UN system so that it reflects, the world of 2026, not the world that it was 80 years ago, and that includes some of these structures like the Security Council and others, which gets very political and tricky. But those are important discussions that member state needs to also articulate and put on the table, not just to say, oh, we cut and we want reform, but what do you see? What do you want from the UN? What do you want from this organization? And how do we get there?
I have also heard some national NGOs saying that UN's operational cost or overhead cost is expensive, and so there should be more national NGOs engaged in implementation and all these, especially when it comes to managing the humanitarian crisis in the Rohingya camps. So that sort of issues are also there. Do you think there also needs to be?
Yeah, I think it also depends very much. I mean, because we are not humanitarian aid. I mean, I know what our overhead costs, and I doubt that an NGO could do implementation cheaper than we do. But again, you would have to look, because different organizations have different funding structures. Some organizations have core funding, so they have a base funding and then can do activities or implement projects in addition to that. Others are fully funded through projects. So I think it's not as easy to say that they're cheaper or more expensive. It might not be true. It might be true in some cases, but not all cases. So I mean, we would have to look at that. But and it also depends. Different UN agencies have different overhead costs depending on their funding structure and how they operate.
Okay. Stefan, you have been here for 4 years. What's the best moment you had experienced?
I mean, that's really difficult. There's been so many best moments, and of course, as I said, the visit of the Crown Princess was fantastic, but accompanying some of these visits around the country. But I think the best and most important, impactful for me has been the engagement with the local communities around Bangladesh.
You have visited a lot of districts, all the districts maybe?
Yeah, I think almost the entire country, and many places I've visited multiple times, and I know Bangladesh much better than Sweden, where I'm from originally. But I think that encounter in the local communities, particularly with women, leading their communities, leading their families in terms of their resilience to climate disaster or after floods, that has really impressed me. And the type of agency that you can see sometimes, when we have worked in communities for a couple of years, you can see the change. That's one of the most gratifying. If you visit a community first and you engage and you discuss with it, and then you see after a couple of years when you've sustained programs and projects and presence, how that creates agency. So you see these women from maybe very vulnerable situation articulating the needs and demands, what their family needs, what the community, they're asking the local government, they're asking us, you need to put more money, you need to do this, you need to build a road here. That, I think, has really impacted me. So it's really with this, probably the most vulnerable communities that I've found, that as a lot of source of inspiration.
Resilience.
Resilience, but also the young people. There's a lot of dynamism, there's a lot of passion, there's a lot of entrepreneurial energy here in Bangladesh. So it's really vibrant, and that I've also loved. You're all constantly on your toes, things are happening. So it's not stagnant in any way. It's a very, very vibrant place in all the senses of the world.
What would be your one suggestion, if I say, for Bangladesh as you leave, policymakers, the people, civil society?
I think continuing with reforms, trying to realize the aspirations of the whole society in terms of inclusion, transparency, sustainability, that everyone can see themselves. But I think also to be kind to each other. Sometimes, I've seen during my years here, there's always somebody leaves and they get a bit blasted, and everyone before themselves didn't do a good job. So I think, to try and build that social cohesion and that kind of common project as a Bangladesh nation that's not too fractured. I think building that would make Bangladesh very strong and try to come together behind a common vision for where all of you see Bangladesh in the coming 20, 30, 40 years. Doesn't have to be, party specific, but to have like a national vision, I think, and be kind to each other. As kind as you have all been to me, I sometimes wish that the way that I've been treating during my 4 years here with everyone from, the communities to the highest political leaders, I wish that, that all of you treated each other in the same way that you've treated me.
I think that was very insightful. Thank you very much for your time, Stefan.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Daily Star.